Welcome to Today I Learned, a video series dedicated to teaching you the inside career tips, must-know life hacks, interesting facts, or pretty much anything you may have ever wanted to know. Keep watching because on our very first episode, we sit down with those that work in the radio industry. If you have ever considered a career in radio, then today's video is just for you.
Jeff Adams. I'm the market manager for West Virginia Radio Corporation in Martinsburg. We operate altogether, the company operates more than 36 radio stations in the Mountain State, but I have 5 of them under my purview here in Martinsburg.
My name is Julie. I have been here for off and on 10 years, and right now I'm currently an on-air personality with 101.5 Bob Rocks. So I have also played multiple other roles though. So I've done assistant programming, and I've been the assistant production director, and of course on top of that we do production, and that's cutting commercials and work with clients and kind of jack of all trades.
So my name is Alex Ilian. My title is the digital marketing manager for Verstandig Media. So that means I handle all the websites that we do. I work on client engagement campaigns. I do also help with digital display advertising as well as keyword advertising. So I kind of wear a bunch of different hats, but I also do occasionally get on the air, which is always fun. So.
And it is different for everybody, but I lived outside of Chicago when I got started in radio, and I actually went to a trade school there, the Illinois Center for Broadcasting. So that was like a 1-year program, hands-on. It was TV and radio, but I hated the TV side because radio has always been my passion.
That's a great question. So I have 2 degrees, actually both from Shepherd University, right in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. The first one I got was 2012, which was a Regents Bachelor of Arts degree. And then the one I just recently got this was back in 2015, was a Bachelor of Arts in Communications and New Media, with a minor in History.
You know, a lot of people who express an interest in radio on the behind the microphone side, the content creation side, and certainly there's always going to be a need for that. That's what I did. I have done most of my career. I've been in radio for 36 years, and I started off as an announcer, and for many years I thought that was the only thing I wanted to do. And then I got into management, and then I became a general manager, which is you're heavily involved in the sales end as far as a general manager is concerned. But let me back up and answer your question, because it really depends on what lane you want to get into. And I'll tell you, no matter what, the best advice I can give anybody who's starting out in any job field is look for less crowded lanes. And what I mean by that is there are plenty of people who want to be sports announcers. We were looking for a news director not too long ago, and we didn't find too many people who were really interested in news content creation, but we found a lot of people who were interested in sports. To be even more specific, we have a acute need in our industry, absolutely desperate need for RF engineers. So if you're interested in radio, of course, or media, the first thing you think about probably is content creation, is being that person who is on the air or that person who's writing the newspaper article. And certainly those are worthy endeavors, but there's a tremendous need for behind the scenes on the technical end in radio. And I would venture to guess in television as well. But, you know, the great thing about radio is it depends, of course, on exactly what you're going to do. But in a lot of ways, if you're lucky, you can get an internship perhaps at a radio station, volunteer at a radio station. You could become a part-time employee at the age of 16 or younger. I know a lot of people who've done that, and they never looked back. You don't necessarily need a college degree. A college degree always helps in a radio career, particularly if you're going to be a journalist, if you're going to be a news director, something like that. But there are quite a few people in our industry who started off as 16-year-old part-timers handing out prizes at the state fair and have now gone on to become managers, program directors, which is the management of the content and or general managers, which you oversee everything. I don't have a college degree, much to the chagrin of my parents. I dropped out of college because I wanted to get my radio career started, and I promised my parents I would go back, and it's never too late to go back, right? I still haven't finished my degree.
And a lot of it, for when it comes to high school, I would say, just as much working in the classroom as it is kind of outside the classroom. So making sure, start a hobby, right? Start a podcast. For the most part, we all have a phone in our pockets, so we all have the ability to reach out and touch the internet and maybe impact the lives around us, even in somewhat of a smaller way. So, just start small. That's what I would say. Definitely focus on, if you're interested in doing marketing, advertising, looking at learning Photoshop in your classes. I know in high schools there are a lot of classes that they will offer the ability to learn some of that creative software. So anything like Adobe Audition, which is audio software, is a great thing to learn. But even just starting off small, for example, you can learn using Audacity, which is a free program if you want to get into audio, learning how audio works and capturing your own audio. So there's a lot of options, I would say, but just start small. And with the internet, there are endless possibilities with how you can get your content out there that you create on your own. And then obviously you can share it with your friends, family, and potentially employers. So
I'll just reiterate what I said already, because I actually put this on Facebook not too long ago, because I know so many people, and we do offer internships here for college credit. And last year we had 3 interns who all wanted to be sports announcers, and that's great. But you really got to be the cream that rises to the top if you want to be a sports announcer, because there's so much competition out there. And sports announcers, a lot of people think they're going to start their career, maybe not the top floor, but they think they're going to start their career in the middle floor. Not in radio. Most likely you're going to start, doing Little League softball in Bozeman, Montana, maybe, So I'll make that point. And also, again, to reiterate, pick a less crowded lane. There is a real need in this industry for RF engineers. There is a tremendous need for radio frequency engineers. If you got the training to be a radio frequency engineer, it'd be a good paying job, and you would have your pick of 12 jobs as soon as you got that certification. So there's a lot. There's still terrestrial radio, over-the-air radio. According to Nielsen, not according to me, 94% of people over the age of 12 still listen to radio over the air weekly. So the future is still very bright for the radio industry, and there's a lot of great people in this industry that make it so. But boy, do we ever need some engineers. So that's the best advice. And again, no matter what career you're looking for, look at the sectors of that career that might have, for whatever reason, less interest. I can tell you, maybe a radio engineer career is not as star-powered as an announcer, but because there's so few of them and there's such a need for them, you're going to make good money as a radio engineer right off the bat.
So definitely internships. I know a lot of colleges almost require internships anymore, but some high schools will allow you to do internships too. For radio, it seems like the more experience and the more people in the industry, the better the chances are for you to continue on. I know here in particular, they're really good at hiring on interns. So if you do a good job as an intern and you're eager to learn, you get your foot in the door. So I think that is the best absolute idea for people.
Believe it or not, still the things that are intangible are still really important. Good eye contact, a strong handshake, somebody who's understands that radio is a 24/7 business. So if you want to get into radio, don't come to me and say, hey, I can only work Wednesdays through Fridays from 8 to 5. It's a 24/7 business, especially if you're getting in on the ground floor. we have opportunities available here. We're looking for a part-time announcer right now, but we need somebody who more than likely is going to be available on Saturdays and Sundays. And you have to really decide. It's a fun business. It's the only business I've ever been in. It's not an easy business. I tell people this all the time. If you want to, are you prepared to move to Bozeman, Montana for a job opportunity? If the answer is no, you might want to think about another career, because I've been in radio my whole life, and my mom still doesn't understand this. I've moved around a little bit in the country in my career. I've moved from St. Cloud, Minnesota, to Jefferson City, Missouri, to Winchester, Virginia, to Charleston, West Virginia, and usually in radio, when you change careers, you're moving. And I don't mean moving down the street or moving 30 miles. You might be moving across the country, and you have to be willing to pick up and do that. Now, that's not to say that everybody does that. There are people I know in this industry who've worked in the same market for 30, 40, 50 years. But if you're looking to grow in your vocation, and perhaps there's not an opportunity in West Virginia or in Maryland or close by, you might have to move to Montana. And I moved to Minnesota in 1996. I was relatively early in my career, and I wanted to be a program director, and no one was willing to give me a shot except for these couple of stations in Wilmer, Minnesota, an hour and a half west of the Twin Cities. And I was married at the time, and my wife and I did not know a single person in Minnesota, and I upped and moved, and we upped and moved, and it was the first 3 months were tough. They were really tough because the stations, it took me a while to get a handle on the radio stations. I was missing home. My wife was not happy at the time. Here we are in Minnesota. We don't know a soul. It's getting cold outside, but it really does get cold in Minnesota. But we stuck it out, and it was one of the best stops of my career. It was my first management job, and I moved from Minnesota out to Altoona, Pennsylvania 2 years later. So
Yeah, so that is actually a really good question. So when what a misconception that a lot of people think is, so I'm from outside, like right outside the city of Chicago. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm just gonna do this program and I'm gonna get into Chicago and I'm just gonna be some Chicago radio star, and that's not how it works. You got to be really willing to relocate, especially in today's day. A lot of it is it's not monopolized because they try to prevent that, but there's a lot of voice tracking. Or like somebody in Ohio will record a show that will also be aired in, here, like Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of simulcasting happening. So it is best for you to be willing to relocate. So I started in Chicago. My first job was in Waterloo, Iowa. And from Waterloo, Iowa, then I went to tiny little Quincy, Illinois, which is pretty much Missouri. And then from there I came here. So, and a lot of people think that big market radio, people get paid tons of money. That's a misconception. Also, you actually get paid better in medium-sized markets like this one. Yeah, because especially when you have small, locally owned radio stations, they care more about their employees, and you actually are valued, and in turn, you get paid more. So they pay you what you're worth.
Yeah, I would say the big thing, just network. It seems kind of silly, but just meeting people who are in the industry, getting to know them, they're going to have lots and lots of knowledge to pass on, especially to the next generation. We love seeing new kids come up. We love having interns here for Standard Media. It's always a blessing having college kids come in and really kind of learn the craft and trade. I'm an example of that. I was an intern here for an entire summer. I worked my way kind of into a position where I could be with Verstandig for a long time, and that was really insightful. That was fun. So I would say just network, meet people, and definitely try to get some internships lined up. There are definitely internship opportunities available in media communication at the high school level for sure, and certainly when you get to the college level. So just keep working for it, get to know people, and opportunities are there. You just have to grab them.
And when it comes to reviewing somebody for an on-air job, the timbre of their voice isn't necessarily a end-all be-all. Really, if you're a compelling personality, if you can tell me a story, if you can pique my interest and hold my interest, you've got an opportunity to be a radio announcer. That's a really good question. I hired a young man when I was with this company in Charleston about 5 years ago who came to me and wanted a part-time job as a radio announcer. And in the interview, I found out he was a ham radio operator. And he had a lot of interest in that. And I immediately took him down to our engineering department, and they mentored him, and he basically had an apprenticeship. So if you have a little bit of a desire, a technical desire, and a knowledge of radio frequency engineering, you could likely get a part-time job and learn on the go. You eventually will need to get FCC certification, what's called a first-class radio telephone operator's permit. But there is such a need in this industry. If I had somebody walk in here and had a need as an RF engineer, I would find a place for that person, him or her.
That's exactly it. And it's any career, but in particular, radio, when you apply for jobs, you send out like a pre-recorded, they call it an air check, which is just basically you doing a fake show. So the key is persistence. Just keep sending them to people, because you just tend to not hear back. Like, nobody tells you no, but you just won't hear back. So, it's kind of like casting a wide net. So you just want to keep going at it and going at it. And I think that applies to almost any job. Persistence is key.